Welcome students to the class on scientific management theory. Before we start with the meaning of scientific management theory, it is important for us to understand the structure of our lecture. First, we will discuss the background in which the scientific theory was developed. Second, we will discuss the meaning of scientific theory and the goals of this scientific theory. Third, we will discuss the principles and the techniques of the scientific management theory. Fourth, we will discuss the criticisms against the theory. Fifth, we will discuss the significance of this scientific management theory in the study of public administration. And sixth, we will discuss the conclusion and a difference or comparison between the scientific management theory and human relations theory. At last, we will critically evaluate the scientific management theory and its role in the study of public administration. Let's start with the background in which the scientific management theory was developed. We all know that the background of Industrial Revolution which took place in the United States of America. This Industrial Revolution marked a shift from the agricultural economy to the factory-based economy, and we know that this Industrial Revolution was marked by three important developments. One, the demand for higher efficiency. Second, the demand for higher productivity, and the demand for digitization of work. But what we need to keep in mind that Industrial Revolution also had its challenges, and these challenges were related to overproduction and joblessness of the workers. Another important challenge that Industrial Revolution faced was related to methods. It was noticed that workers were responsible for selecting their methods, and it was known as the rule of the thumb, and it was not at all scientific in nature. Therefore, this rule of thumb method was leading to inefficiency and chaos in the organizations. We also need to keep in mind that during this Industrial Revolution, there was a new class, and this was a class of managerial class. The managerial class also faced all these challenges, especially the problems in labor and management issues. Therefore, Industrial Revolution not only promised higher growth and efficiency, but also had its own challenges. In this context, Frederick Taylor had come up with his theory of scientific management. What is this scientific management theory? Scientific management theory is a scientific outlook on the study of management and labor, and especially it's a new dimension in the study of public administration. The main thesis of the scientific management theory was if methods are chosen correctly and if there is a systematic evaluation of problems and selection of workers as well as use of methods, then human efficiency and productivity can easily be increased. The theory of scientific management was based on three important components. Number one, it valued the component of human rationality. Second, it valued technical skills. And third, it valued the role of methods, better to say scientific methods, in increasing productivity and human efficiency. The scientific management theory also was based on three important assumptions. Number one, according to Frederick Taylor, every organization could touch the height of development, prosperity and productivity if proper scientific methods are used and applied. Second, every man is an economic man. And third, a worker is a good worker if he does not initiate the action but follow the instruction. Therefore, scientific management theory is nothing but all about clearly stated rules and regulations and instructions which are fixed in nature and universally applicable. That is the reason Taylor mentioned that every management should have a true science and every management should be based on scientific outlook. So, scientific management theory had provided a scientific outlook to all the organizations, and it was scientific because rules and regulations were fixed, universally applicable, and based on scientific methods. The goals of scientific management theory are very important. This theory had two important goals. One, to increase the industrial output. The most important goal of scientific management theory was to understand the reasons behind the low productivity and to increase the production in industries. Another important goal of this scientific management theory was to apply scientific methods, and by applying scientific methods, utilization of human and material resources. Therefore, the second important goal of the scientific management theory was the utilization of human and material resources for maximum industrial output. Now, if we try to understand the goals of the scientific management theory, it is quite clear that Taylor, through this theory, wanted to develop a science of management. And it was not only a science of management, Taylor was preoccupied with the fact that every industry must find out the best way to do certain works. Therefore, scientific management theory was very much concerned with that one best way to increase the productivity and industrial outputs. From this perspective, scientific management theory was regarded as a mental revolution in the study of public administration. Why is it called as a mental revolution? Because according to this theory, it not only involved the role of the workers, but it also recognized the role of the employers. Therefore, the workers and the employers both were responsible for industrial output, for maximizing industrial output and utilizing the material and human resources. So, after discussing the goals of the scientific management theory, Frederick Taylor also developed the principles of scientific management, and it was very much well discussed in his famous book, The Principles of Scientific Management. According to Taylor, there were four important principles which played important role in increasing efficiency and productivity, and these four important principles are: number 1, standardization of work method; number 2, scientific selection and training of the workers; number 3, equal division of labor between the worker and the managers; number 4, mutual cooperation between the worker and the managers or the employer. If we look at these four principles of scientific management, then we can understand that why is this theory known as mental revolution, because the last two principles highlight the cooperation and equal division of labor between the worker and the managers, and from this perspective this theory was a mental revolution, because the traditional theories have never recognized the mutual cooperation and division of labor between the workers as well as the employers. Now, if we look at the first two principles, it is quite clear that Taylor was preoccupied with the role of the methods, and Taylor mentioned that if scientific methods are properly used and applied, then industrial output can be maximized. So, there must be the best way of doing a particular work, and that leads to the standardization of work method. Second principle is equally important because second principle highlights the role of the science of training and selecting the workers. According to Taylor, this role is very important. This principle is very important because every worker has certain virtues and qualifications, and this can be properly utilized with the use of scientific methods. Therefore, the principles of scientific management revolve around method, equal distribution of work between the manager and the workers, and mutual cooperation between the managers and workers. Now, after the principles of scientific management, we should also look into the techniques of the scientific management theory as propagated by Taylor. For Taylor, the first important technique of scientific management was related to shop management theory. It means that he was very much preoccupied with the role of the workers and the managers at the lower level of the organization. He looked into all the problems at the lower levels of the organization. Apart from this technique, Taylor also mentioned about functional foremanship. What is this functional foremanship? Taylor mentioned that this concept of functional foremanship actually negated the principle of unity of command. What is this unity of command? By unity of command, it means that the worker should get commands only from one boss. But Taylor mentioned that the worker should get orders from 8 bosses. Apart from the theory of functional foremanship, Taylor also highlighted the fact that the workers should be motivated by monetary incentives. It means their wages should be related to the pieces which the workers are producing every day. It is also known as differential piece rate theory or the system. In this way, Taylor developed different types of techniques to increase the productivity and industrial output. These techniques were very much reflective of the scientific methods which Taylor repeatedly emphasized. After explaining the principles of scientific management theory and the techniques of this theory, it is equally important on our part to understand the features of this theory. So, the first important feature of this theory is the concept of harmony between the employer and the worker, not the concept of individual dispute. Second important feature of this theory is related to cooperation, not dispute or individualism. Third important feature of this theory is related to the notion of science, not the rule of thumb. As we have already mentioned that Taylor had continuously asked for the application of scientific methods, not the rule of thumb. Another important feature of this theory is the development and prosperity of the workers as well as the employer. And lastly, we need to keep in mind that this theory is also known for its contribution and mental revolution. Therefore, the features highlight that the scientific management theory is all about applying scientific methods and increasing industrial output instead of restricted output in the organization. Now, after the features of the scientific management theory, it is also important for us to understand the major criticisms against the theory. It is important to keep in mind that no theory is beyond criticisms. Therefore, scientific management theory was also not beyond criticisms. The first major criticism against the scientific management theory was that it was extremely mechanistic in nature. It projected a mechanical view of the worker. There was no place for human elements in organization and industry. Everything was judged and evaluated on the basis of scientific methods. Therefore, the excessive importance given to mechanization and methods received enormous criticisms from other parts in the discipline. What we need to keep in mind that there was a need of ideal balance between mechanization and human relations. Another major criticism came from trade unions because this theory did not pay any attention to the role of trade unions, as everything was dependent on the role of machines and scientific methods. Even another type of criticism came from the managerial class. They had two types of criticisms. One, the excessive importance given to scientific methods reduced the role of the managers, especially their role in selecting the workers. Secondly, this theory increased the role of the managers and workload of the managers. We need to keep in mind that there was no scope for trade unions for the workers. Another form of criticism was related to the fact that this theory was extremely economic in nature. It highlighted that all workers were economic man, but it had forgotten the fact that workers were not only economic man, but they were also the social man. Another form of criticism was related to the question of productivity. This scientific management was based on methods and machines, but if excessive attention is given to methods and machines, then it hampers workers' creativity. Therefore, there was a critical separation between science, method, and creativity. Another form of criticism came from the theories of motivation. Scientific management theory propagated the monistic theory of motivation. And what is the monistic theory of motivation? It is related to monetary incentives, and it emphasizes the role of monetary incentives in increasing workers' productivity. But this theory only propagated the monistic theory of motivation and overlooked other factors. What others pointed out that monistic theory of motivation could also lead to another factor, that was demotivation for the workers, because there was no place for creativity for the workers in organization. Therefore, scientific management theory not only overlooked the role of human elements, the role of human relations in the organization, the scientific management theory also overlooked the role of the informal organizations in the organization, or the role of trade unions in the organization. We need to keep in mind that while understanding the nature of organization and public administration, there must be a balance between machines and human elements. What we need to keep in mind also, that in spite of criticisms, this theory had its own significance, because this theory tried to solve out many challenges which were product of industrial revolution. Not only this theory also advocated the role of the workers as economic man and it cannot be ignored that there is also an economic dimension in human work. Another important factor that we need to keep in mind that this theory has established the role of the scientific methods in organizational practices, in managerial practices, and in public institutions. We also need to keep in mind that this theory has also established the role of the formal organizations, techniques, rules and regulations which are extremely important for increasing industrial output. Therefore, this theory cannot be underestimated on the ground that it's a mechanistic theory. Rather, we need to understand that this theory was extremely significant because it tried to address the questions related to time and motion. This theory wanted to establish a science of management by dividing huge work into small pieces, by delegating proper methods to the workers, and also by instructing the workers to finish their work within a stipulated time. Therefore, one important contribution of the scientific management theory is the theory of time and motion that motivates the worker to finish huge chunk of work within a particular time with the help of scientific method. So, industrial revolution had produced multiple challenges, but the scientific management theory, the classical theory, had tried to address all these challenges. However, criticisms came from human relations theory, but the contribution cannot be ignored in the study of public administration.